Daisy Olson curled up in a ball on the floor and braced herself for another blow to her kidneys from Decker's boot. "I'm not going to tell you again," he hollered. "We ain't keeping that kid, and I'm not letting you keep it neither. I never wanted it. You got yourself in trouble, and I'm going to get us out of it. I've got a buyer for that kid, and you're not cheating me out of $50,000. He paused and chuckled. "You know, at that rate, you and I can have a kid every year, and we'll never have to work another day for the rest of our lives. I'm tired of stealing cars. I can't make a living that way, at least not without getting caught and thrown in jail. Besides, it ain't enough to raise no kid. So you get that idea out of your pretty little head, Daisy." She let out a scream when the toe of his boot connected with her back. He would cause her to miscarry if he didn't stop kicking her, and then she'd be blamed for that like everything else. "Stop!" she cried. "You're gonna kill a baby, Dick!" He threw his head back and laughed. "Yeah, that wouldn't be too good, would it? Then I wouldn't get no money for it. Clean yourself up and make my dinner. I'm going down to the garage to meet Kenny to make sure everything is set with the buyers for that kid, and I expect my dinner to be ready when I get back here." He stepped over her and walked out of the kitchen door, letting it slam behind him. She lay there, suppressing her sobs until she heard the roar of the engine and the low growl from the dual exhaust of his stolen Mustang as he left the street in front of the small rented duplex. She pulled in a deep breath and tried to rise from the floor. Pain assaulted her ribs like a cold knife slicing through her. She needed medical help, but couldn't wait for an ambulance to get to her. Decker would be back in less than 30 minutes. She could catch the city bus on the next block and be out of the neighborhood before he returned. It would take her an hour to get to the county hospital that way, after making a transfer to the crosstown bus, but at least she would be away from him. After that, she had no idea what she would do. She couldn't go back to her job. She couldn't stay with her friend Beth, because that would be the first place he would look. No, she had to disappear, this time for good. Last time she left, he'd found her within 2 hours. Would he look for her at the hospital? She had 6 more weeks before the baby was born. Could she hide from him that long? She grabbed a couple of Walmart bags and crawled to the tiny bedroom to pack her things. She didn't have much. Most of her things were still at Beth's apartment. Why had she left there and moved in here with Decker? Beth had warned her not to trust him, but she hadn't listened. Daisy had defended him, but he became a different person ever since she found out what he did for a living, claiming she'd shamed him just for knowing the truth about him, as if knowing made a difference. She'd suffered one beating after another for begging him to change his ways, until she let it go and accepted the truth about the man she'd foolishly trusted. He didn't want a real job. He preferred the easy way out of everything. Decker Reese was a thief and a liar, and now an abuser, and it was time she got away from him before he did some permanent damage. What had she ever seen in him? He'd smooth-talked her into believing he was half-owner of Kenny's garage. His smile could charm her into doing whatever he said. Her swollen belly was evidence of that. But he'd fooled her into thinking he was financially stable and responsible. It made her sad to think that he was the farthest from all that. She'd been on her own ever since her Aunt Lila kicked her out of her trailer just after she turned 16, when she'd caught her new boyfriend making eyes at Daisy. It wasn't her fault he was a dirty old man. She'd done everything she could to discourage his ogling, but her Aunt Lila had accused her of encouraging him nonetheless. The man ended up drinking himself to death, but Daisy didn't go to the funeral. Aunt Lila wasn't worth going back to, and she wasn't worth feeling sorry for, not after the way she turned her out onto the street when she was still only a child. Things might have turned out worse for her if not for her mama's friend, Beth, who took her in and helped her get a job. She'd quit school to help pay her half of the rent, since Beth was on a fixed income, but she'd managed to get her GED, which was more than her mama had done. With little education and no real prospects for a permanent job, she had no way of paying for a baby. Maybe Decker was right about that much, but she could never sell the child. It pained her to realize the child deserved better than what she could provide for it, and perhaps her only solution was to give it up for adoption. She bit back tears of self-pity, hurt, and anger as she stuffed her things in the Walmart bags as fast as she could. She let out a squeal every time she moved wrong, thinking he'd busted one of her ribs this time. She couldn't walk upright without a great deal of difficulty, but the taste of adrenaline filled her with courage and determination to move past the pain.